and welcome to the RTE Soccer Podcast. I'm Anthony Pyne, and I'm delighted to be joined by Paul Corry and Keith Treacy to reflect on another eventful weekend of action. If you're having Olympic Games withdrawals, then don't worry, the League of Ireland title race is more twists and turns than a relay final, and a few teams dropping the baton on a weekly basis at the moment. We're going to chat about the jostling at the top, and we also have two live hopes in Europe after Pats and Shamrock Rovers both fared pretty well in their first leg ties last Thursday. We'll look ahead to their upcoming return legs. Lee Carsley is the interim England manager. Confirmed, or was confirmed a few days ago. His first assignment will be to try and beat the Republic of Ireland in the Nations League. We'll touch on that, and we'll briefly look ahead to the return of the Premier League, which starts on Friday night when Manchester United welcome Fulham to Old Trafford. First though, Paul, let's chat about things at the top, and let's go back to Friday night, because Derry City had the chance to turn the screw on Shelbourne when they hosted Dundalk at the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium. Their home form has been good, but they dropped 2 points. It was a 1-1 draw. Sort of the story of their season in a lot of ways, Paul. Like, they just can't quite build up a proper head of steam to really put pressure on Shelbourne.
Yeah, and it feels like we've seen that game play out a number of times for Derry this season, whereby they've been on top of opposition. They just can't seem to put it to bed. And you feel like if they continue on this sort of trajectory of dropping points, they're really going to rue missed chances, because that was a huge opportunity the other night, particularly with Shels playing on the Saturday, just to apply a bit of pressure to Shelbourne and see how they might respond, and obviously give yourself a chance of kind of nudging your nose out in front or on level on points with Shelbourne, and they just weren't able to do it. And like I mentioned, it feels like one that they'll regret, particularly when you look at the chances that Danny Mullen has had late on in the game. I think the one where he's gone to lob the keeper is certainly one he should score. I think he's got enough ground between the keeper and the goal to get the ball up and down not with ease, but I don't think it's the most difficult of chances. And then obviously he's had that one where he's gone through one-on-one with Goddard, and Goddard does well to get down and save it. But it's those sort of chances and those clutch moments that, if you are to go on and win a league, you really need to be taken. Michael Duffy had a good chance with a header in the first half as well, and it must be very frustrating, because it felt like they in the enough just weren't able to put them to bed. And even when you look at the goal they conceded, like, it's a brilliant header from John Mountney, but it's a set piece, and it's probably one that you can avoid. So it's probably one where he's scratching his head, Rory, thinking how they haven't kind of come away with 3 points, and it's another massive opportunity that they've missed, given the fact that Shels dropped points.
Like, what is it, Keith, about Derry? Because, you look at them at times and they look so good. They're such an accomplished team. They were good against Shels. Is it just a case that they're missing? Are they a player or two shy? Is it a mentality thing? Because they just seem to have these occasional stutters that undermine them when they're really trying to go and get over the line and win a trophy.
Yeah, I wouldn't straight away. I wouldn't think it was a squad depth issue. I think they have. I think they have the strength and depth to be able to go and win the league. But I don't know whether it's a hangover from the Shelbourne. They seem to be able to compete really well against, the bigger boys in the league, and then Dundalk come to town. And look, I get it. I get it. On the top of it, you're probably thinking it's an Astro pitch. You have to move the ball that little bit slower. Dundalk with a lower block, really hard to break down, defend well, and then score a decent enough goal. So, yeah, look, I think you're going to get this from Derry from time to time. And when Derry went 1-0 up, I was looking at the league, and you're looking at it and you're thinking, like, this is now Shelbourne and come under a real bit of pressure here, and let's see how they react. But then Dundalk go and get it ends up being a draw, and you're thinking they've had so many chances in the season to go and put pressure on Shelbourne and go and make it a real title race, and it just doesn't look like they're going to be able to do it. It's just they're so inconsistent, and I know Rovers are the same. Shelbourne now are starting to stutter a little bit, drawing a lot of games, not necessarily losing, but nobody seems to be able to pick up the mantle and go and really put Shelbourne under pressure. And for that reason, I think Shelbourne are favourites. I don't think they're going to be perfect between now and. I don't think Rovers are. I don't think Derry are. I think Derry will continue to drop points against teams we expect them to go and beat. And I just don't think anybody's going to be good enough. I think they have a buffer at the top now at the minute, Shelbourne, and I think that buffer will stay in place because, as I say, nobody has the consistency to go and really challenge them.
We should give Dundalk their flowers as well, Paul. It was a dogged point. I actually Felix Goddard in particular, because I know a couple of weeks ago I mentioned that he had made some mistakes, and he had a rough couple of weeks, but he had a good game on Friday. And there is a resilience there under John Daly. Like, it hasn't been brilliant or perfect at Dundalk by any means, but there is a bit of toughness that means they can go up to the likes of Derry and dig out a result like that, which should give them a little bit of encouragement.
Yeah, and they've managed to pick up quite a few points since Staley has gone in there, and it is probably just about being dogged and difficult to beat, and particularly when you're going up and playing against Derry away, it's actually just sucking up the pressure for those moments and trying to be as difficult to break down as you possibly can. And Goddard, rightly so, deserves a mention. That save that he pulled off from Danny Mullen was very, very good. Got down really well and touched it around the post. And he was good when I saw him in Daily Mount a couple of weeks ago as well. I guess it's just about maybe maintaining a bit of consistency between himself and the back four that I was quite critical of in the week gone by. So it's a big point. It's probably one that when you're kind of looking down through the fixtures, you don't look at Derry away and say, yeah, that's maybe one we can pick up one. So that's probably a bonus for John Daly. And the way Drogheda have gone on the weekend picking up point, it was probably important that they actually maintain that gap, because it's going to be really tight, I think, between those two sides between now and the end of the season. And the more points that Dundalk can pick up, particularly against those top sides, the better. But it feels like the results against Drogheda are huge, and I think I'm correct in saying that they play each other final game of the season, and it feels like it might just come down to that one. But a really, really good point to pick up away from home and on the road against Derry.
Yeah, and although it was frustrating for Derry, that pain was eased somewhat 24 hours later, Keith, when Shels were beaten by Sligo Rovers. And we'll talk about Sligo in a bit, because I mean they are a team in form, and are now fourth, only on goal difference behind Waterford. But with Shelbourne, like, it sort of rubbed salt into the wounds on Saturday, because Will Jarvis came off the bench for Hull City in the championship and did really well in their draw against Bristol City, and like, he is such a big loss for them. Like, would you be worried, but with how they looked when they needed to try and find a goal? It just seemed like they ran out of ideas quite quickly. They ran out of gas. That lack of guile and cutting edge, as we head for the tail end, the crucial part of the season.
Yeah, I think Sean Boyd is a massive miss. I know he's been on the bench, he's in and out, but he really is struggling with injury, and not having him there to be able to start games and be a focal point. And it's not just what Sean Boyd brings to Shelbourne, it's how he unlocks the wingers as well to be able to do stuff. Will Jarvis is going to be a huge miss. Gavin Malloy is going to be a huge miss. But Shelbourne just seem to keep rolling with the punches. And I don't think Damien Duff, I don't think the Shels fans should read into this one too much, because Sligo are, absolutely on fire. They managed to turn over most of the big boys this season. They're in really, really good form. They're a well-run team, and they know how to go and hurt teams. They were really unlucky against Pat's two dodgy penalty decisions, and McGinty should have done better with Kavanagh's goal. So I wouldn't be pressing the panic button from a Shelbourne point of view. I know people will be saying, well, Jarvis has gone back, Sean Boyd is injured, it all looks to be coming apart. I don't think so, and I'm sure Damien Duff is too knowledgeable to think anything other than we were beat by a really good team. There's no point pressing the panic button, and this shouldn't derail Shels' season, because they've been largely brilliant. But I get the point where you're saying, Anthony, they do look a little bit blunt up front, but they have looked like that, generally under Damien Duff. They do look a little bit blunt. They'll score one, maybe two goals maximum, and they'll defend really well. So the old saying is, you only have to score one goal if you can keep a clean sheet. And if Shels can, nick a goal here and defend really well. And the one thing with Shels is you're looking at them and think they're not playing well, they're not clicking. Shels aren't a team where you think of free flowing football, playing through the lines, all attractive stuff. They can do that, and they do that at times, but they don't need to do that to beat teams. So I'm far from pressing the panic button for Shels. I still have them as favourites to go and win the league, although some of the indicators are saying it might be getting a little bit tricky, but I'm still confident they can go and win it.
Yeah, they have their success to this point, Paul, has been built on that solidity and organisation. You could probably say similar about Sligo. Like, Waweru has got a few goals and got a few headlines recently, but I think a lot of Sligo fans would point to Denham and Pyne at the back that have given them this platform to take off. Like they suddenly look a real solid outfit. And they are now pushing for Europe. They're pushing for the top three, and they're probably the informed team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely, and they were very unlucky with that game in Richmond Park the week before. That's 5 wins and 6 now. It's 3 clean sheets in that period of time, which is, like you mentioned, that foundation that they built upon, and then Awero with his goals gives you just that bit of belief when you're kind of in games that if you can present a chance to him that he's gonna take it. And it was one of the more straightforward goals that he's going to score all season, but he still took it well when the opportunity was presented to him. And Sligo have that bit of momentum behind them, Anthony, like you mentioned. They seem to be kind of firing on all cylinders, and that's sort of after the break. Whatever has happened from Sligo perspective has just kind of really set them in motion, and got a good draw in the FAI Cup. They're going very strong in the league. Who's to say that they're not going to kind of push for that European spot at the moment? And the way the league is, like, if you can pick up a couple of results, you can very quickly fire yourself up the table. And that's what Sligo have done. If they can continue it, they'll absolutely be in a shout for kind of that top 3, top 4. But there just seems to be a lot more consistency through the team, consistency in selection, also consistency in performance. And John Russell in particular deserves massive credit, because there was probably a period there, particularly at the start of the season, where people were kind of scratching their head, wondering how long he was maybe going to be in that job. But Sligo have persevered with him, and the team persevered as well with John Russell, and it's really reaping dividends for them now. And that was a huge result for them. Probably not their best performance. I thought Shels probably controlled the majority of the second half and, really pinned them in, but they were just dogged in how they defended. Didn't allow Shels to maybe create too many clear-cut opportunities. And I can't think of too many chances that Shels had, other than maybe that one that Bert had where he kind of fired over the crossbar. Sligo limited them to kind of opportunities from outside the box or cutting corner or crosses out into their box. So massive credit. It's just whether or not they can sustain it now, because we've seen teams kind of build up a bit of momentum and die off. Let's see what Sligo are made of. And like I mentioned, good draw on the FAI Cup. Could see them going deep in that competition.
Yeah, Sligo fourth, then just behind Waterford on goal difference, as I said, and then you have to go all the way down to fifth. And we'll stick with you to chat about Shamrock Rovers, Paul. I know you were in Tallaght. The definition of a, as far as Shamrock Rovers are concerned, for the last couple of years probably, but they got a 1-1 draw. I think we can say they deserved a draw yesterday, Paul.
Yeah, I think so. Shamrock Rovers weren't at their brilliant best, and we've probably said that a number of times this season. I still think, though, like when you go 1-up through Darragh Burns, you probably expect that they kick on from there. And if maybe Graham Burke's chance goes in, I mean, Ryan Brennan does unbelievably well to get back and cleared off the line. It maybe becomes an easier proposition for Shamrock Rovers, but that's kind of been the tail of their season. They're not killing teams off, and they're not doing that enough, and they're just giving points away when you expect, and like we've seen in previous seasons where they just kick on and they put teams to bed. But it just wasn't to be, and they've conceded sloppy goals in previous games, and this felt like, yes, it was a well worth goal, but there was a warning sign a couple of minutes later, or a couple of minutes before, I should say, where Drogheda very nearly got themselves back level, and maybe you thought, okay, Shamrock Rovers will sit deep and shut up shop, but they were very, very open. I would imagine way too open for what Stephen Bradley was hoping for. And Drogheda rightly got themselves back into the game. It was a really, really well worked goal and a really well taken goal as well. But it is one of those situations where you look at Shamrock Rovers and you just feel like their games that they were winning in years gone by. Just seems like there's a little bit of softness maybe to the team at times when it comes to conceding goals that we haven't seen previously, either the mistakes from the goalkeeper or the back five, or maybe just not being as solid in the middle of the park. It's very hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but they're just not killing teams off, Anthony. And like I mentioned, dropping points. I thought when Graham Burke and Jack Byrne came off last night, they probably lost a bit of control of the game. Didn't seem to work, and it galvanised Drogheda in, and like you mentioned, very much worth that point. And whatever it is about Drogheda, Shamrock Rovers just seem to consistently drop points against them, whether it be in Tallaght or in Drogheda itself. Just don't seem to be able to put them away.
Did you ever have a bogey team in your career, Keith, team that just always seem to raise their game for some reason.
Yeah, there was one or two that I always hated just playing against, the likes of Millwall and Stoke, teams like that. Never seemed to go there and enjoy myself or get a good result. It was just one of those. You'd be in the hotel before the game and you'd be thinking, God Almighty, this is going to be hard. And yeah, I don't remember getting too many fond results down in the den, in the old den either. So I'd say Millwall. I've very few nice things to say about that place. Never enjoyed it. Danny Shitu barking like a dog at the front of the tunnel before you go out. It just wasn't a nice place to be.
Yeah. Well, what about Shamrock Rovers then? Because look, and we're talking about. I keep saying, they can launch a late run at this title, but they have to work to just get a European place as well. Nothing's going to come easy for them. But first and foremost, they do have this massive game on Thursday against Celje. 1-0 down from the first leg. They've kept themselves in the tie. This is a huge game on Thursday, Keith, because if they can get through this into the playoff of the Europa League, I mean, that guarantees group stage football in the Conference League as well. And they are in it. They might be patchy in the league, but in a one-off game in front of a good crowd at Tallaght Stadium they've had a good look at this Celje team last week. Rather look maybe at times, but I don't think they would have been coming out of that match thinking, these are a class apart or anything like that. They probably fancy this on Thursday.
Yeah, I would be similar to you, Anthony. I think they felt Celje's power, and although they got beat on the night, I think there's a few circumstances. You can say they rode their luck. There were certain times they probably could have went down 2-0, wouldn't have been worst result in the world, but the pitch was really, really poor over there. Stephen Bradley referenced it once or twice in his post-match interview as well. So I think it's going to be a completely different game, and Tallaght will be a better game of football. I think that will obviously lean itself into Shamrock Rovers. I think they probably are a better footballing team, but I am judging Celje on what I seen the other night as well, which would have been difficult for them to play any type of nice football. So look, I think the one thing you do when you go away from home in Europe in the first leg is you bring it back home to your ground, and you're still in the tie. Shamrock Rovers are definitely still in this tie. They very little to be afraid of. The one thing for me is Neil Ferrugia. I think he is the difference in the Shamrock Rovers team. I think he has everything about him. That M product. I mean, we've seen in a couple of the European games already earlier on that he's missed one or two chances, and it's proved to be pivotal. If he can give us that end product on the night, it can be the difference to Shamrock Rovers winning the game. And if they do, as you said, Anthony, what a huge guaranteed European group stage football. It would be absolutely massive for the League of Ireland, for Shamrock Rovers fans. What a boast to be able to walk around and say. So I think every League of Ireland fan is wishing Shamrock Rovers all the best and that they can do it. I certainly am. So let's wait and see. I think they've every chance for it. I don't want to jinx it because, like you say, you're putting your foot into the unknown with Celje. I'm not quite sure. I'm judging them on what I've seen them up against Shamrock Rovers, and the pitch was very, very poor. So difficult to know what we're going to get from them, but I expect Rovers to go up a couple of levels and have enough of them.
Yeah, it feels like the pitch, like the pitch in Tallaght probably feeds itself more into how Celje want to play as well. It's just about kind of understanding what levels Celje are at, and probably figure that out 15, 20 minutes into the game. But I'd be with Keith. I think Shamrock Rovers have a real good chance, and they've picked up some really good results, haven't they, in previous years when it's come to the home leg. And we were saying last week that it was just important that the tie was still alive, like Keith mentioned. I think this is a really good opportunity, Anthony. I know they obviously have the safety net of dropping into the Conference League, but I think this is one where, from what we've seen in the first leg from Celje, I think Shamrock Rovers definitely have enough to at least apply a lot of pressure to give themselves a really good chance of getting through. But I think this is one they'll fancy.
The other European hope, of course, is St. Patrick Athletic, who take a 1-goal advantage, albeit they have to go to Azerbaijan, and that seems like a challenging game for a few different reasons. But let's just look at their game first of all against Galway United on Sunday. Bit of needle around this one. St. Pat's wanted the game postponed. Stephen Kenny went on the record a couple of times and said that he felt the game should be postponed to help their European hopes. Irish clubs doing well in Europe helps the coefficient. It's good for everyone. Galway were not particularly happy about that. They refused the request, and John Caulfield in his post-match interview did mention that they felt disrespected by it, that they should never have been expected to or asked to push that game back. But anyway, at the end of it all, it's a decent point for Pats. I mean, they had to rotate, they had to dip into their squad. I'm sure if you said it to Stephen Kenny before the game, a 1-1 draw over there with no fresh injury concerns, he probably would have taken that.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have. I mean, given where they are in the league at the moment, it feels like their season and the success of their season is really hinging on that European campaign. I thought it was a good point. I thought, in particular, the goal was really well worked when Kavanagh picks it up off the back four. Jay McCallan just gets into a lovely little pocket. Jay McCallan has this to his game. Probably just haven't seen it enough in a Pats jersey where he gets into those pockets and he can be ruthless from outside the box, and it was a really good finish. From there, I'm sure Stephen is probably feeling that maybe they've enough on and win the game. I'm sure when they reflect, given kind of Galway's record, particularly at home this year, and how difficult they are to play against, a point is not the worst result at all. And like you've mentioned there, they've rotated the squad enough that maybe some of the more important players that are going to feature when they fly out to Baku manage to kind of get a couple of days off or just get a bit of rest into the leg. And some players played 15, 20 minutes yesterday. So it's not the worst situation, not the worst equation. I know Stephen would much rather not have played that game and just had all the time to focus on the return leg. But as results go and performances go, it probably wasn't the worst situation for Pats to come away from Galway with a point. I mean, Galway were very unlucky. I didn't think that was a disallowed goal. I mean, it looked very, very soft from the set piece, and I think they were very lucky to get away with that one. So point, not the worst result, and you're just hoping that Pats are in a really good position now to kick on in Baku during the week. It felt like maybe, they missed a bit of an opportunity to really put Baku to bed with the chances that they had and then being down to 10 men. But as kind of 3-4 days business go, I'm sure Stephen Kenny be delighted with the position that they're in from a European perspective and happy enough with the point that they got in Galway.
Yeah, I mean, that second leg near Baku against Sabah, Keith, it's a 5 p.m. kickoff. Remember Stephen Kenny, his last European club game before he took the Ireland job with Dundalk, they played Larnaca and drew 0-0 at home, and then went over there to Cyprus, and he was in the 30s and were given the runaround, a real chase. And I'm sure he's that must be in his mind, like that kind of experience, because he looked at Sabah last week. Pats could have won the game 3 or 4-0. They were very, very good, but they could be just a completely different team on their own patch. I was looking at the forecast. It's going to be almost 30 degrees heat for that Thursday evening kickoff. So it is still a big ask for Pats, even though they certainly looked a better team last week. This is still a big challenge for them.
Yeah, it is, and I would be slightly nervous of what could come from Sabah, because although they weren't great on the night in Tallaght, when they kicked off, Anthony, they kicked off. They went to the right back. It worked its way to the left back. They chipped it into the centre forward. He chested it off, played it out to the wing, and he won a corner kick in the first 15 seconds of the game. And I thought, oh wow, these are a serious outfit. And after that, after about 10 minutes of the game, Pats got the grips with them. Pats were by far the better team. And the longer it went on, I was thinking, we need to score again. We need another one, because the last thing you want to do is to rue all these missed chances. Joe Redmond hits the post with a brilliant header. El Bouzebi brings a good save out of the goalkeeper. I think Mulroney missed the header he should have done a lot better with. And I think Redmond had a header that he got to ahead of the goalkeeper, that if he'd have got it moving downwards, he'd have definitely hit the back of the net. So there was a whole host of chances. But they have a Jamaican winger called Paris. They've got Sadiqa, a Nigerian sort of centre midfield player, attacking centre midfield player, Safranco, a really good target man, and Michels, the German boy, the winger. They're really, really good, really, really quick. But on the opposite side of this, and I think Stephen Kenny be licking his lips thinking Sabah are gonna want to keep the ball, they're gonna want to move us side to side. And with El Bouzebi and Mulroney being in the form that they're in, Pats are set up to go and counter attack. And look, I know Stephen Kenny won't just give up possession. He won't say let Sabah have the ball, but in that heat, I think I would be accustomed to dropping back a little bit, playing that little bit lower, and telling El Bouzebi and Mulroney, use two boys to cheat a bit. Anto Breslin and Solberg, Solberg had an absolutely brilliant game in the first leg, brilliant in all the 1v1 duels he come up against. He will have to do similar in the second leg. Anto Breslin will be just as important. If they can defend in 1v1, it will Mulroney and El Bouzebi to go and cheat that little bit, go and get the second goal, and then the two wingers come and help that little bit more. So I do see that Pats can score over there. It's just the heat, it's just the humidity, how they're going to cope with that. So there's a lot of unknowns we're stepping into. But again, we've looked at Sabah, and although we've thought, yeah, they're dangerous, we can see how they can score a lot of goals. They conceded 6 against Maccabi Haifa in the legs building up to that. They did also score 6 themselves, I know, but they're an open team. They can see it and they will score. So look, I think Stephen Kenny be thinking we can score over there. I don't think he'd be thinking clean sheet wins us the game. I think he's thinking let's go and score and see what Sabah have in the locker. So I think we're in for a really interesting one, and hopefully Pats have enough on the wings to go and win the game.
If you look at, I was looking at the highlights of that Maccabi game, Paul. Like, just when they conceded 6, they were. I mean, they're clearly a talented team. They've internationals and they're strong going forward, as Keith says. But their 2 full-backs were absolutely awful in that game, and you would think that Pats have the tools to exploit that if they get their game plan right.
Yeah, and Keith mentioned it there, you know, those transitions, particularly with the form that El Bazzetti and Mulroney are in, you feel like there's opportunities there. And teams, particularly when they're at home, will probably want to dominate the possession, and they'll probably commit a huge number of bodies forward to attack. You just feel like it's on those transitions when there's space in behind their back four. Can you get into positions where you can exploit them, and can you actually convert the opportunities similar to the ones that they had last week? And they're certainly going to have to do that, Anthony. It feels like if they're going to go through, they're going to need to score. I'd be surprised if Sabah at home weren't to convert at least once. It's just whether or not Pats can click in that final third and take advantage of some of the weaknesses that exist within that, but also into some of the strengths that Pats have. It feels again like similar to Shamrock Rovers. It feels like a really good opportunity. I don't think this is one where maybe you're looking at the game and thinking, okay, Pats have absolutely no chance of going through. I think they have a really good opportunity. Yes, given the lead, but I just think maybe some of the players that they have are probably suited to playing in Europe. And I think the confidence with the team, particularly going through the last round and how they performed in the first leg, will keep them on. And hopefully, you know, we could get one of our 2 teams through. If we get two of them through, it'd be absolutely fantastic. But if we get one of the 2 to win during the week, that would be brilliant. But it's about, you know, being resilient. It's about not giving away too many chances. You don't want to do what Shels did when they went to Zurich and concede within the first couple of minutes with the game. It becomes a very difficult 90 minutes then. Staying in the game at 0-0 for as long as you possibly can, and just try pick moments, transition and break on Sabah, and see what you can do from there. But I'm sure Stephen, listen, he's got so much experience of playing in games like this. I'm sure he'll have his team going out feeling 10 feet tall, and hopefully they can push themselves and hopefully get through.
Yeah, big week coming up for Rovers and Pats. Let's chat, Keith, a little bit about the Hulls who've had a tough night. I mean, there's defeats, and then there's defeats that really hurt you, and just looking at their games as well, Keith, coming up. Their next, so they have Kerry in the cup. Shamrock Rovers appeal against Dawson Devoy's eligibility in that cup game failed. So Bowls do indeed progress in the FA Cup. They're away to Kerry on Friday. But in the league, they have Shels away, Shamrock Rovers at home, Shels at home, Derry away, and then they play Drogheda. So, you know, they're not safe. They're not immune to be sucked into that bottom 2. And the nature of that loss, again, 2-0 up, you know, missing at the stoppage time to snatch a draw back, that will be particularly hurtful to a team that sort of looks low on morale at the minute.
Yeah, it will be a real sucker punch, especially when they win the penalty in the last minute. You're thinking, right, 3-3, just get it over and done with. But it all started so well for them, going 1-0 up early doors with the Dale Rooney goal. I enjoyed the Dawson Devoy finish, just hit it the other direction, didn't put an awful lot of power, but the keeper was rooted and it just made its way into the far post, bobbled its way in. It was a nice little composed finish, but then you're looking at checkpoints throughout the game. And I'm sure Alan Reynolds would have referenced it at half time. Lads, Waterford are going to throw the kitchen sink at us now for the next 10, 15 minutes. Keep a clean sheet just for the next 10, 15 minutes, and we'll take this thing out of them. 2 minutes later, they go and concede. It's an OG from a corner kick, and they're under the cosh then. And look, Waterford were brilliant in transition in particular. The wingers were really good. Derek Power goes and equalises. Yeah, they eventually go and win the game. And there's always going to be periods in the game where you're not quite on top, you're not quite playing your best football. When balls come off the boil and they're not quite playing their best football, they just seem to completely fall apart in games, and there's no backbone, there's no minimum standard. They really do drop really, really low, and teams are taking such advantage of it. And look, Anna Reynolds has already said he's going to step away from the under-21s. I think that's just given the amount of pressure that he's coming under with the Bohs thing. People are saying you can't be doing both, especially when results have been so bad at Bohs. It's coming under the spotlight. But for me, they have the talent there, especially the attacking players. They have the tools to go and score an awful lot of goals, but they just don't have the backbone to keep other teams out. And when going gets tough, a lot of them go missing, and that's not something that anybody should be able to throw at their team. But I'm sure if you were to ask Alan Reynolds in a quiet room, when the going gets tough, a lot of them players go missing, and it's not great. A 2-0 lead at home should never be washed away just as easily as it was. But from Waterford, from Keith Long's point of view, an absolutely brilliant win. But Bohemians' backbone is coming under an awful lot of question for me.
Yeah, and the goals, and like the goals, like he mentioned there, really kind of clear snapshot of Bohs at the moment. Dale Rooney does really well for his goal. And then there's a lovely little play between McDonald and Rooney to set up the Voice goal. And you feel like, okay, they're really well worked, really creative in the final third. And then you look at the goals that they give away, one's from a long throw and two from corner kicks. And anytime the ball goes in the box, you just feel like there's nobody kind of meeting with any sort of aggression to clear lines. And you worry for them in that sense. And I've been at a number of their games in recent weeks down in Dalymount, and you can feel and you can see what Reynolds is trying to do. Some of their play is really good, and there's spells within games where they're playing quite well. But there's too many games now where they're dropping points. The Dundalk game, when they went ahead, they probably should have gone on and won that game. The game against Waterford the other night, 2-0 ahead to lose 3-2. Their form at Dalymount is horrendous. I don't think they've won in the league since April at this stage now. And that has to be a bit of a worry. I don't think they'll be sucked down into that. I could regret saying that, but I don't think they'll be sucked down into that battle between Drogheda and Dundalk. I think they'll be fine. I think time is needed now for Reynolds to build on the players that he's brought in, the kind of work that he's done, but they've got to cut out some of those mistakes like he mentioned.
Sorry, Andy. I think we should mention as well. I wasn't at the game now, but I looked at the highlights of the Bohs game, and the penalty towards the end. For me, it's a foul, but it's outside the box. It's probably a yard and a half outside the box, and the referee gives a penalty. And I hate coming on here and giving out about referees, but I think Waterford come away with huge grievances, and it wouldn't be the first time over the last couple of weeks that a lot of teams have had a lot of grievances with a lot of decisions in the league. And for me, it seems like the players have got bigger, stronger, quicker, faster, but the referees are standing still. And I'm not having a poke at the referees. I know they need help. The game is getting quicker, and it looks like we're just standing still on that one. And it needs to get better. The officiating needs to get an awful lot better.
Yeah, I think Paul did mention as well in that Galway game there was a Galway disallowed goal that looks soft, in fairness. What about Waterford then, Paul? I mean, they've been fantastic. Up to third, and a great resilience about them. And you talk about backbone and steel, because they kind of tailed off a little, and they lost Asamoah in the July, I think he went, and you think maybe they're just going to taper, but they've sort of come back again. Really good signs for them in terms of being able to sustain this push for a European place.
Yeah, and it would have been easy for them to maybe throw in the towel 2-0 down in Dalymount Park. Bohs flying, but it probably says a lot about the character of the team and the character of the manager that they were able to kind of claw that one back. And I mentioned there that they were set pieces, and they might not have been the prettiest of goals, but they're bloody effective when they go forward. And that I think I'm correct in saying that's 3 wins from 3 now for Keith Long against Bohs this season, and they've certainly picked up far more points than I would have expected at this stage of the season. I'm sure a lot of people, particularly when you look at the newly promoted teams, would have thought, okay, potentially Waterford and Galway will be down in around those playoff positions. We're talking about Waterford now in the context of European football next year, and whether or not they can pick up enough points between now and the end of the season. And that is a magnificent achievement, because there's such a gap in standards between the First Division and the Premier. Probably only a year where Waterford probably had to up their performance to a level when they were playing the likes of Galway and maybe sticking into cruise control for some of the other games. The division is so tight this year. from top to bottom that no game is a gimme 3 points for any team in this division. And the fact that they have 40 points from their 27 games, like they're only 6 points behind Derry at this stage, Anthony. There's a real opportunity for Keith Long to take them into Europe. And if he was to do that, I mean, that would have to be up there with one of the best jobs of the season. And he deserves massive credit. His stock is certainly rising again after what was a difficult exit out of Bowes. I don't think anybody would deny that. You know, he did serious work there while he was at the club, and it was a difficult exit. But the fact that he went down to Waterford and he's rebuilt that club is a testament to himself as a manager. And it'd be interesting to see now between now and end of the year whether or not they can sustain and whether or not they can push for European football. And then he'll look to add a couple more bodies. But the job that he's done there is absolutely magnificent to date within the season.
Yeah, absolutely. They're having a fantastic campaign, and it'll be interesting to see if they can indeed sustain that push. And Sligo, it'll be a very interesting battle for third and fourth. Let's just move on then away from League of Ireland affairs and chat about the international stage. Lee Carsley, Keith, is officially the New England manager, or on an interim basis at least, and his first assignment will be to try and beat the country that he represented 40 times, the Republic of Ireland, at the Aviva Stadium in September. First of all, Keith, like what kind of reception do you think Lee is going to get from Ireland fans?
I'm not too sure, Anthony, to be honest with you. Look, I think from when you scratch the surface of it, you probably feel a little bit betrayed that he's a proud Irishman. He's playing, and now he's in England. But think about it on football in terms. I think it's a very, very attractive job. I know Gareth Southgate hasn't left an awful lot of room for improvement. You're going to have to go and win something to build on what he's done. But look, I don't think anybody would turn that down. I mean, I'm the proudest Irishman you'd ever meet, but if I was ever offered the England job one day, I'd take it. So, look, I think he's in with a great shout of getting a full time, Anthony. I think he's getting it now on an interim basis against the Republic of Ireland and Finland. I don't expect England to have too many problems against those two. So I think the FA will look at it and think if and I think modern football has moved on now. You know, people demand a big name coming in. I think people now are more on player side, and you think, well, the modern day footballer has to be friends with the coach. And Lee Carsley seems to get on with all the players. A lot of them have graduated from the 21s and ended up in there. You will know most of them personally. And yeah, I do think it's going to be an Englishman moving forward. I think Sven-Göran Eriksson, Capello, a couple of others have had the English job and not really covered themselves in glory. So I do think the FA will go for an Englishman. And when I look at Carsley, I look at the pool maybe the FA are looking around in. Graham Potter, I can talk myself out of that one very quickly given how poorly things went for him at Chelsea. Eddie Howe at Newcastle, possibly, but you know, he's been given bucket loads of money at Newcastle. At Burnley didn't go too well. I know it was outstanding at Bournemouth, but it's just somebody who's ready for the England job. And there's a couple of wild cards in there, the likes of a Gary O'Neill, who's done an excellent job at a couple of clubs in the Premier League. A Sean Dyche, who maybe doesn't fit the bill for the FA. But if I did tell you that Sam Allardyce was once the England manager, maybe Sean Dyche doesn't sound too mental after that. So, look, I do think Lee Carsley will end up as the England manager. And for me, there's absolutely no hard feelings. I can see why he would want to do it, and as a career path, it's exactly where you want to be. So no hard feelings. I hope from him as an absolute in September against us.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, Paul, when like the profile of international managers now. Like even sort of 6 years ago, it wouldn't have been very hard to imagine someone like Lee Carsley getting that job. But you actually can't imagine it now. You look at Spain, De La Fuente, who came. He kind of cut his teeth managing their underage teams, went on to win the Euros with them in the summer. I know Carsley had, like, Anthony Gordon described Lee Carsley as the best man manager he's ever had. He had him at the under-21s. Some of the other players in the senior squad now will have experience of working under him. So, I mean, I don't know which way the English FA are going to go with this. It seems to be that Lee Carsley is taking this very much on an interim basis for the start of the Nations League and possibly for a few games beyond that. But could this be a sort of an Eileen Gleeson situation where if he does really well, they just decide, okay, well, let's just stick with him. He's the guy who ticks too many boxes to ignore.
Yeah, I think irrespective of him becoming the interim manager, I think he always would have been within, the frame of 3-4 names that would have a really good shot of getting the job purely on the basis that he's done with the English FA today. And they also like to promote from within. We saw that with Gareth Southgate when he came through the ranks. I agree with Keith. I think he's got a really good opportunity. I think the 2 games that he's in for Ireland and Finland, you would expect that England will have the majority of possession and should dominate those games. And it's whether or not you can kind of see enough of the Carsley print within those games that they think, yeah, that's something that we want to go with. There's probably a little bit of pressure on the English FA now to go with a manager that is a bit more open-minded or a bit more attacking in kind of how they set up. The fans and maybe some of the players didn't really seem to buy into how defensive Southgate was when it kind of came to those bigger games, and maybe favourites sitting in and trying to counter versus more open and trying to get some of their bigger names into the game. And if you look at some of the games that Carsley's been in charge of with the 21s, and I know it's only 21s football, but some of the football is brilliant, the way they play through the thirds. They've also played that way and been successful in winning competitions. And I think when the FA look at that, they might go, okay, that's a manager who understands international football, understands how to work with players for a limited period of time and get a kind of pattern of how he wants to play across to players. And when you look, like Keith has mentioned, of what else is out there, there isn't names that really jump off a page that go, yeah, that's exactly who we want to take in. Graham Potter doesn't stand out for me either. I think Eddie Howe will stay at Newcastle. I think all indicators are pointing towards Lee Carsley. And this, let's be honest with it, this is why Lee Carsley didn't take the Irish job. You know, opportunities to take on a job as big as England don't come around too often. The stock is very high. Like I mentioned, the FA like to promote from within. Financially, you know, he probably earned 5-10x what he would at Ireland. This is a huge moment for him in his career. And if these games go well, I'm with Keith. I think he's the man that the FA are now looking at as potentially being the next manager.
What about our lads then, Keith? Because this is, of course, the first game for the new Ireland manager, Heimer Hallgrimsson, who does have form upset in England. He was part of the Iceland management team when they bet England at the Euros in 2016, albeit this is a far more cohesive and stronger looking England team. How do you think he goes about it? I mean, does he just try and shut up shop, frustrate them? You know, it's not the most glamorous way of approaching these games, but maybe pinch a set piece or something like it. Realistically, is that the best hope that we have here?
Yeah, I think if I was to sit here and say that, I think we can go toe to toe with the English. We can play nice ball. We'll play out from the back. We'll play through the towards. We'll get people on the half turn. I think as it all say that's not going to happen. And look, there will be periods in the game where we can play football, but for the mainstay, don't mess around at the back. Make the English break us down. Make them play round us, not through us. And we will get little set pieces. And I think Heimer Hallgrimsson, from what I've heard from him with his interviews building up to it, I think he is going to be more pragmatic, or a lot more pragmatic than certainly Stephen Kenny was. So I think that's a blueprint for us. I think until a player of a Wes Hoolahan ilk or somebody comes there and we can say, like, get the ball into him, he's the playmaker, he can make us tick. Until somebody like that comes through, we have to be more pragmatic. We have to bypass the midfield. And that's not a blanket approach. Obviously, if a lower ranked team, if somebody ends up coming to the Aviva, then okay, we can open up. We can maybe play 4-3-3. We've very good wingers. We can counter attack. Playing 5 at the back with the wing backs will help us. But you know, defensively, we're okay. We've some very good centre halves. So don't shy away from that. Keep clean sheets and see what we can go and nick. And I think that's the only way we can be competitive against teams. You know, and people would say, you know, we played so well against the French and the Dutch. They were workmanlike performances. They weren't football performance. They were go out there, suffer. They're going to have the ball, but when we get it, try and hold them as quickly as possible. And yeah, that's just the way it's going to be. But I do think the thinking needs to align, because we're in an extremely tough Nations League group. It will probably be tough to even get a point on the board. We all know how good the Greeks are. The Finnish are not a bad outfit, and the English, you know, the English could be anything if they click. So we need to align our thinking here and think this is going to be a really difficult one. Just like the ladies have gone into a really difficult group as well. I think everybody realised that they were going to suffer in that group. It's going to be a learning curve. This is going to be a learning curve for our lads. And yeah, let's just hope and learn from it. Let's throw a couple, try and be competitive. But the only way we do that, Anthony, is being an awful lot more pragmatic, having a hybrid approach. And making the Aviva a really horrible, tough place to come, and not one that people say, well, Ireland are nice and neat and pretty, but they're blunt up front, and we need to be able to hurt teams. And we all hope. I've been digging on Evan Ferguson. I'm not sure where he's at with his ankle injury that he finished last season with. I haven't been able to find any info. So hopefully he's fit and firing in September. And yeah, we have the likes of Benny, Azaz, one or two other schmodics as well. As looks like he's going to hit the ground running in the championship, scoring already. So there is hope for us there. But the blueprint is clean sheet, clean sheet, clean sheet.
Yeah, that game is a 5 o'clock kickoff on Saturday evening, on the 7th of September. So, if nothing else, I think we're going to get a pretty good atmosphere at Lansdowne Road for that match. Let's just turn our attentions to the Premier League, lads, which starts back up on Friday night. Manchester United against Fulham at Old Trafford. I'm gonna ask you about. I know you have preferred English teams. Paul, it's Chelsea is your side, and you're an Arsenal man, Keith. So let me ask you about Chelsea, Paul, because and you might be able to enlighten me a bit more. They brought in Neto, who is a good player, a little injury prone, but he is a very good player. But like, how many players have they got? How many do they need? And how do they go about actually putting a shape on this squad? Because it seemed like Pochettino was just starting to get there, and then they got rid of him. How are you feeling at this point going into a new season? Would you have confidence that they actually can start to get a structure on this massive squad that they have and make genuine progress?
Oh, it genuinely could be anything, Anthony. It's very hard to know what we're trying to get from Chelsea this season. Getting rid of Pochettino was not, starting to build up a real head of steam as they finished that season last year. And you could finally start seeing a bit of a blueprint of what it is he was trying to do and who he was trying to, base his side around. And it felt like now they've gone back to the drawing board with Maresca. I've watched a couple of the pre-season games. They shipped 4 against Celtic, 4 against Man City. And some of the goals they conceded, it was like watching schoolboy stuff up in Fairview Park where they're trying to play out from the back and the ball's being turned over in positions where players are spread out, and Haaland got 2 of the easiest goals that he'll get when he played against them in pre-season, and that was quite consistent with what we saw against Celtic as well. So I couldn't even tell you what the starting 11 is going to look like. There's too many players in that building, and that just seems like it's going to be a headache for Maresca at the beginning of the season. I was just reading this morning, there was talks that they're going to go for Joe Felix as well, and you kind of wonder why would you go for Felix when you have so many options in that final third? When players aren't playing, naturally enough, they become difficult to manage around the training ground. You've got players there on 5, 6, 7, 8 year contracts as well, with so much security, having to manage that too. And Maresca, who hasn't got a massive profile as a manager, you feel like if they have a bad performance against Man City on the weekend, they get beaten 2 or 3-0, the pressure's already going to be on them. So it's going to be an interesting one. I don't think Chelsea are going to be a team that are going to be anywhere near the top of the table. I think if they were to get top 4, that would be a huge achievement for Maresca in his first season as managing in the Premier League. And I guess what you do want to see as a Chelsea fan is just a bit more progression from some of the players that they've invested so heavily in, because for the likes of Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk, there's plenty more names there as well that you could rhyme off. The money that they've invested in hasn't paid off to date, and they still look short at the back. I don't think Badiashile or their answer. So a lot of money invested, a lot of change. Do I think Chelsea are in a better position than they were, say, when they had Thomas Tuchel in charge? I don't think so, and I think that worries a hell of a lot of Chelsea fans.
Keith, things a bit more settled at Arsenal. I know you were never really convinced, I don't think, last season that they could get ahead of City, but they gave it a real rattle. What have you made of what they've done? They've done a little bit of business in the summer. They probably don't need that much, to be fair, like with the age profile and that, the squad. And, is this the year that they can finally do it now, Keith? Do you think you sort of have to just hit the woodwork a couple of times before you do get over the line? And bearing in mind that you're up against a City team that demands that you got to break 90 points to even be in the conversation.
Yeah, it's the level is just ridiculous. I mean, you just have to look across the Liverpool, and they will tell you how high the level is to try and compete with Manchester City. And are we short? I like Calafiori. I like bringing him in. I don't think he's going to play as a centre half. I think he'll probably utilised more as a left back, and that was a problem for us over there. Zinchenko's a good player, I like him, but in terms of being robust and playing every game a season, he's a million miles off that. And sometimes this season he has been left wanting, made a couple of mistakes as well. So yeah, I'm happy Calafiori's come in. I would like a goal scorer. And I feel like I've saying this the last couple of years. I'm a big fan of Jesus, lovely football. A big fan of Havertz. He does score a couple of goals. Havertz 14 goals last season, but I think we need a 20 goal a season striker. You know, we've Saka on one wing. He jumps in. He's 16 goals last season, and that's going to be a big feat for him to get up there again. Trossard with 12. You know, he's predominantly comes off the bench, so we're looking for him as well to get up into double figures. And we just need somebody that we know is going to hit the back of the net back. Get an Ivan Toney who's been thrown around. If we get somebody like him, I think we could run Manchester City very, very close. But I think City have to come off their best. I think if City go, 90% near their best just throughout the league, they leave everybody else behind. And I think the rest of the league is looking, they need a suboptimal performance from Manchester City throughout the league to be able to catch them. But look, I think Arsenal will give us a little bit of hope again. I think we're getting better. I think we're putting the building blocks in place. I didn't think we'd be as close as we were last season. And yeah, I think we're the closest challengers. We'll probably move on to the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool. But for me, they've probably gone backwards this season. So again, it's probably a two-horse race with City being odds-on favourite to go and win it. Arsenal probably being second favourite, and then it's a toss of a coin for third and fourth for me. It could be really anybody. And the likes of Newcastle with no European football, but they creep in and get top four this season. I think it's going to be a really exciting season, but I do think the front two are set in stone, but there is a little bit of give in there what positions they come.
Yeah, for sure. And the likes of Aston Villa could have an interesting campaign. They're back in the Champions League. Liverpool under Arne Slot after the Jurgen Klopp era. So yeah, it could be a funny season. And of course, there's a bigger Champions League this year as well, with the new Swiss model, and there's no Christmas break and all those kind of variables. What kind of impact that will have on players who look pretty tired. A lot of them, if you looked at anyone who was watching the Euros, there's a lot of tired looking players involved in that tournament. So we shall see. As I said, that starts. We go again from Friday night when Man United play Fulham. Let's just have a quick recap of the Women's Premier Division action at the weekend. Shelbourne and Athlone remain top of the table. They're both on 31 points, comfortable wins. Shels were 4-1 winners away to Cork City. Rachel Graham played her 200th game for Shelbourne in that match. Brilliant for the Athlone Town were even more comfortable. They saw off Sligo 5-1 at home. Any chance of a shock result there for Sligo were ruined really after 2 minutes. Their goalkeeper Bonnie Kiernan was sent off. DLR Waves pretty much ended Peamount United's title hopes. They had a 3-2 again at UCD Bowl there. Galway moved up to third with a 1-0 win over Shamrock Rovers. Janice Slattery scored from the penalty spot, and Bowles picked up a 1-0 win at Treacy United. Just a reminder that there is live football on RTE on Wednesday. It's the Super Cup final between Real Madrid and Atalanta. Coverage starts at 7:30. So yeah, listen, as we leave it there, thanks again for joining us, and we will be back next week for more of the same. Thank you. Bye.